Hi, my name is Catherine Borges, and I am presenting today on DNA and Lineage Societies, with thanks going to RootsTech and to FamilySearch for making this presentation possible. Brief disclaimer, the information and views, etc., that are in my presentation are not those necessarily of RootsTech or FamilySearch, nor of any of the Lineage Societies that I'm discussing today. I am not a representative of them. Additionally, the information was current as the date of that I gave this presentation, but may be subject to change. So to begin, there were two lineage societies in 2006 who announced that they were going to start accepting DNA for lineage applications. And those two societies were the Sons of the American Revolution, which they formed a DNA committee and then announced the policy that year. And the other was the General Society of Mayflower Descendants, which is, the acronym is GSMD, but it's more commonly known as the Mayflower Society. So they actually use DNA to corroborate a lineage of a descendant of John Halland. John Halland was the gentleman that fell off of the ship, so good thing they fished him out, or he might not have any descendants to join the Mayflower Society on, right? So they used it in an application for one of his descendants on the line that had some issues as a corroborating proof, and that is exactly the way DNA should be used. Additionally, the Mayflower Society was very innovative and set up their own DNA project in 2004. And originally it was to find the origins of Miles Standish, but they opened it up a few years later so that all paper trail lineage descendants of Mayflower passengers could join. This is what it looks like today. So if you put in your Google browser Mayflower DNA Project, this is the page you'll find. It's very full of information, tells what lines are in the project, has the volunteer administrators down in the bottom left-hand corner that you can contact them and ask any questions. But yeah, I've always admired the Mayflower Society for being so innovative in setting up a DNA project. I first became aware of them because also in 2004, I set up a Fuller DNA project. Now I'm just a volunteer administrator. I don't get paid to do this, but I started the Fuller DNA project because I had a Fuller line in the South, and we didn't know if they were related to the ones that were on the Mayflower. So we accepted all Fullers in our DNA project, and that way we're able to sort out the lines. So it answered the question. My southern line is not related to the passengers that were on the Mayflower, but it also revealed some very interesting things about the Mayflower passengers' DNA. So there were two Fullers, surnamed Fuller men on the Mayflower. It was Edward Fuller and his brother Samuel, and Samuel was a doctor. Well, unfortunately, Edward passed away and didn't get to settle in Plymouth. He did sign the Mayflower Compact. And Edward had a son named Samuel, and his brother Samuel had a son named Samuel. So you can see that this is going to present some issues for people in the future trying to sort out all of these Samuels. However, something very interesting happened. So you can see it here on the chart that I put together of the Mayflower passengers' DNA. And the very interesting thing is that they had a change in their DNA. This is Y chromosome DNA results. And on the very first marker, the Dr. Samuel line had a change in his DNA from a 13 to a 12. And Edward and the other Fuller descendants had their DNA was a 13 there. So I'm thinking it was a 13 that's changed to a 12 because it's only shown up in the Dr. Samuel line. And we're able to pinpoint it from using the genealogies of the people in the project to that mutation occurred in either Dr. Samuel or in his son. So really, I say this all the time, is that particular branch of the Fullers hit the DNA jackpot lottery because of that change in the DNA, in that it helps to identify out the line. It helps to sort out all of these Samuels. So, even when I have someone that's brick-walled and can't connect to the Mayflower Fullers, if they match that Samuel line, I know which direction to point them into. So that was a very helpful change in the DNA. So this is what Y chromosome DNA's results look like. And another interesting item to note here is you'll see down below these other Fullers listed, like say Matthew Fuller and Robert and Thomas. Well, these were other Fullers that came on ships later than the Mayflower, like Thomas Fuller of Dedham, Massachusetts. He came on a ship later, but their families handed down the verbal tradition that they were related to the Mayflower Fullers, the ones that came on the Mayflower. And the DNA corroborates that. They match. They share a common ancestor. The Fullers are from Reddenhall, England. And all of these Fullers share a common ancestor that probably originated in Reddenhall, England. So, yeah, it's really interesting, but I just thought I'd share that with you about these Mayflower Fullers. So, the Sons of the American Revolution have now updated their DNA acceptance policy guidelines as of January of 2020. And this is the link if you would like to look it up. But probably the easier way is if you just Google Sons of the American Revolution DNA policy, and you'll get the same link, because that's how I found it. And this is what the policy is, just a short little paragraph of the policy. But what I noted was interesting is that they are also including XDNA now. And some of the companies like Family Tree DNA do give you results for the X chromosome. The X chromosome is the, a woman is 2 X's. She receives an X from her father and an X from her mother. And a male receives an X from his mother and a Y from his father. So they are using that too, because that can be very helpful in sorting out lineages. But all of it, again, I just want you to remember it's corroborating evidence, just like a census record is. You still need more proofs to prove a line. DNA is just not a magic ticket. It is just helpful in sorting through brick walls sometimes. So, the colonial dames of the 17th century, to my knowledge, is not yet accepting DNA for lineage proof. However, they do refer people to DNA projects. So in this book, they actually have referred people to try to sort out and check their lines for the Bowling DNA Project. It's spelled Bolling, very early colonial line. So check out this book, especially if you have any Bowling ancestors, but see if there are recommended DNA projects in there for you. As time will go on, you will see more Lineage Societies accept DNA, I think. It's just, a matter of education and Lineage Societies are volunteer efforts mostly. Some have paid staff, but Colonial Dames is really small, so give them time. Moving on. Surprise, surprise. The Daughters of the American Revolution, the DAR, was actually the very first Lineage Society to accept DNA for lineage proof. So they came out with this press release in 2004 announcing that they would accept DNA for lineage proof. And they had already accepted, I think, some applications with using like paternity DNA testing and things like that. But they announced this in 2004, and then in 2007 they rescinded it. So yeah, that was a bummer. But just as time marches on, they once again in 2014, so 7 years later, they announced that they would take it again. So they began accepting DNA for applications in 2014, and this is the press release announcing that. And they started out only accepting Y chromosome DNA for lineage applications. Now, one of the questions that we get a lot when talking about, if you're in the Daughters of the American Revolution, you're a female, how could you use Y chromosome DNA for a lineage application? Well, that's easy. So you get a male relative to test as your proxy. My brother has one of our Patriot line ancestors' Y chromosome DNA and surname. So all I have to do is prove how I'm related to my brother. It's easy. And I even have one of my DAR Patriot ancestors is named Wright. And I've even DNA tested as far as like a 6th cousin who had the Wright surname just to be able to get Wright DNA. So I didn't use it to prove the application, but I just want to illustrate to you that's possible. You can even get very distant people to test. If you look at the DNA projects on the Family Tree DNA for a certain surname, And you might even find that someone's already tested for that Patriot line ancestor, but you do need their permission to be able to submit it to DAR. DAR also came out with an online course to help to educate you on how to use it for an application. And so it's in the members only website and it costs $100, but it's very innovative of them to come out with a course to help people learn how to use it for apps. Actually at Continental Congress, that's our big DAR conference every year in Washington, D.C., held at DAR Continental Hall, that they announced, and this year it was virtual, well, 2020 it was virtual because of the pandemic, but they announced virtually that they were going to start accepting autosomal DNA and mitochondrial DNA. But the policy change currently right now in July of 2020 just shows the autosomal DNA update. So I'm sure they're working on mitochondrial, they'll get mitochondrial coming out, but yay, DAR. So that was so exciting to hear that announcement. And they are going to open up all kinds of avenues for new members in being able to submit autosomal DNA results. The DAR partners with Family Tree DNA. Family Tree DNA is the only company that offers Y chromosome testing and mitochondrial testing, and then they also offer autosomal DNA testing, which a lot of other companies have too. But as far as submitting results, especially for the Y chromosome, Family Tree DNA is who you need to use for that, and they offer a discount if you want to order the kit through the DAR's affiliate page here. So you get a discount. Discount's good. This is if you Google, again, Google is your friend. If you Google Y-DNA DAR application, you will inevitably hit upon the President General's blog. So we call the head of the DAR is called the President General. And she did a blog post about the first time that Y chromosome DNA was used in an application, and which was in 2016, as you can see on this post. I do believe that this is the second instance where Y-DNA was used to help approve an application. And this, again, I just found this via Google. This is a blog post written by the lady that used it. Her name's Adrienne, and Adrienne is actually one of the co-administrators on the DAR DNA project, which is right here. So this is a current image of the DAR DNA project, and at the time I did the screenshot, it's got 5,200 members, or over 5,200 members in it. So not only does it help to add those you know, if you're a DAR member, to add your own DNA to the DAR project so that it will help them in being able to prove those lines. But you can also add the Y chromosome DNA for Patriot lines. So like I added my brother is in the DNA project. So it will help the volunteer administrators, which are again in the lower left-hand corner, to be able to sort out these different Patriot lines and attach them to our Patriot ancestors. And these are things we'll see coming more and more in the future, where it's still just a very new, you know, technology to use for genealogy. So what do you do if you test it with Ancestry or 23andMe, but you've not tested a Family Tree DNA? What do you do? Can you still join the DAR DNA project? Yes, you can. So all you need to do is you go to Family Tree DNA's homepage and see there on the upper left corner where it says upload DNA data. And it will give you instructions on how to transfer your DNA from the other company that you tested with to Family Tree DNA. And then once you're in the database, and if you're a DAR member, you can join the DAR DNA project. Now, some things to keep in mind. You have to download your raw data from the other company first. There's all kinds of instructions out there on the internet on how to do that and then upload it into Family Tree DNA. But another caveat I want to tell you about to keep in mind is because you're just doing a data transfer, and although it's free, and then it's $19 if you want to unlock their other features like a chromosome browser, it's still $19. But something to keep in mind is that your DNA will not be on file with Family Tree DNA. So if you ever want to do an upgrade, you're going to have to submit a sample to them, it's a little swab of saliva from inside the cheek. You're going to have to submit a sample to them because they don't have a way to upgrade just data. They need your actual DNA on file. So it may be worth it just to test outright with them. And again, too, you could do it through the FTDNA order page. So and get on the DAR order page if you're a DAR member and you're interested in that. Well, DNA is a very complex topic, and I'm self-taught. I've been learning about it since 2003, and I actually first heard about using DNA for genealogy purposes via the DAR. So I attended a DAR district meeting in 2003, and the speaker talked about using DNA to get through a brick wall, and I tried it, and I didn't have success at first, but then I did, and I was hooked. And I set up the Fuller project and other projects, and I've had lots of success using DNA for genealogical purposes. So, but it takes a lot of self-education. DNA is not something that just serves you up all your ancestry on a silver platter. It has a learning curve to it. You need to self-educate. So the ways that I did it in the beginning is I read everything I could get my hands on. There were a couple of books published. I read those books. I have an example of a book here, Finding Family, about an adoptee who uses DNA to get past his unknown parentage. And the book is a page turner, absolutely riveting. I can't recommend it enough. But there are other books out there that are more general and educational and beginner level to learn more about DNA. But there's also an absolute ton on the internet. There is, well, like these videos. There's plenty of DNA videos at RootsTech you can watch, which RootsTech is free for 2021. There's also tons of videos on YouTube. Down below where it says isog.org wiki, I've been the director of ISOG, the International Society of Genetic Genealogy, since 2005, and we make as many resources available as possible. There are just thousands and thousands of resources in our ISOG wiki, so I recommend you check that out so you can learn about DNA. And then lastly here, you may consider joining a DNA interest group. The acronym is DIG. We have a listing of them on the ISOG website. If you, again, just Google, you can go to the wiki and put in DNA interest group, or you can just put it in Google, whatever you prefer. And you'll find a list of DNA interest groups in your area. But what I have pictured here where it says Gabalon Chapter DAR, it's the very first example I've ever seen of a DNA interest group that is started by a DAR chapter. So if there's any more out there, I'd love to hear about it. But Gabalon chapter is in Gilroy, California, which Gilroy, it's a garlic capital. It's near San Jose, California. So what Gabalon does is when they have their DNA interest group meetings, I think they hold them quarterly. Some DNA interest groups are monthly, some are quarterly. A lot of them are on Zoom right now because of the pandemic, but they hold theirs quarterly, and they got a free meeting space, but they invite other chapters to participate that are close by. So that's something you could think about doing too, is either forming a DNA interest group to help self-educate or joining a DIG. So that about wraps up my presentation on DNA and Lineage Societies. And if you'd like to learn more and get more information too, you're also welcome to join our ISOG Facebook group. So, and we have a mailing list now too on Groups.io. So anyways, thank you very much. Thank you, RootsTech. Thank you, FamilySearch. And that's the end. Thanks so much.